The neon glow of Olympus Station's cantina shimmered through the haze of 100 voices speaking in a dozen different tongues. Yet wherever Zara moved, silence followed her like a shadow. Her violet-tinged skin caught the warm amber light streaming from the biodome above, where false stars shimmered across a synthetic night sky, a pale imitation of the triple moons that once lit her homeworld. With practiced ease, she adjusted the folds of her indigo dress, its threads gleaming like captured fragments of starlight. Night was supposed to be different. Night someone had promised to see beyond the surface, past the rumors, the wary stares, and the cruel names that had followed her species across 17 star systems since the Kari joined the Galactic Alliance. But at table 7, the empty chair across from her told a familiar story. Her untouched glass of luminescent wine reflected her eyes back at her, twin pools of violet sorrow. The ache in her twin heart settled heavy in her chest, like the pull of a collapsing star. The cantina's atmospheric processors hummed softly overhead, whispering recycled air laced with the fragrances of far-off worlds, the heat of Centauran fire blooms, the crisp ozone of Altarian crystal gardens, the earthy perfume of Terran roses. Around her, life went on. Laughter, flirtation, the endless swirl of beings searching for connection in a galaxy too vast for comfort. But for Zara, the melody of belonging always seemed just out of reach. Wind chimes from Altar 7 tinkled in the airflow, their crystalline notes weaving through the hum of conversation. Deeper sanded growls mingled with the melodic chatter of Vidian merchants trading routes through the Andromeda corridor. Zara's slender, coral-like fingers traced the rim of her untouched drink, a swirling blue cocktail called Nebula's Dream that shimmered like trapped starlight. Her second pair of arms remained folded tight against her sides, an instinctive barrier, shaped by years of stares, whispers, and polite avoidance. Across the room, couples shared quiet moments, translucent Alarians whose laughter rang like crystal bells, furred Ursanids nuzzling in gentle affection, even two plasma-born beings whose luminous forms twined together, casting shifting auroras across the ceiling. No one looked at Zara that way. When eyes did turn toward her, they carried curiosity, unease, or pity thinly disguised as fascination. "I should have known better," she murmured, her voice soft as a song from her oceanic homeland, a place of deep currents and glowing creatures that danced beneath endless pressure. 17 attempts, 17 rejections. Her reflection in the table's polished surface showed what the galaxy saw, lavender skin marking her as alien, 4 graceful arms branded as abnormal, the evolutionary gifts of ancestors who survived the crushing depths of high-gravity oceans. By Kari standards, she was beautiful. By most others, she was simply strange. At the bar, 3 human traders shared a laugh at her expense. Their faces were creased by long voyages and too many nights spent in dim outposts like this one. 4 arms, bet she eats twice as much, one sneered. His beard stained with cheap synth ale. Poor guy who was supposed to meet her probably bolted, said another, lifting his drink in mock toast. The third chuckled. Maybe she ate him. Their laughter sliced through the cantina's low murmur. Sharp, metallic, cruel. Zara didn't look their way. She didn't need to. She'd heard it all before. The crowd's attention had started to shift, glancing toward Zara and the tables around her as the whispers of curiosity grew louder. Her secondary arms crossed protectively over her torso, while her primary hands clenched her glass so tightly it trembled, threatening to shatter. Among the Kari, emotional sensitivity was a hallmark of the species, a gift that had made them renowned empaths and healers across the galaxy. Yet tonight, that gift felt like a curse, each glance and murmur striking her like a physical blow. Zara could sense every flicker of the observer's feelings. Amusement, disgust, pity rolling over her in waves. Her carefully maintained defenses burned under the intensity, leaving her raw and exposed. A soft chime came from her personal communicator, a confirmation from the dating service. Perfect harmony. Dating. Connecting souls across the stars. The words seemed almost mocking against the reality of her loneliness. The cantina doors hissed open with the smooth sigh of pneumatic mechanisms, and a figure stepped inside, wrapped in silk that shimmered like molten metal. The man's presence drew every eye. Wealth and status were written into the fabric itself. Zara's breath caught. Nexon Vex, the one she had corresponded with for 3 months through the interstellar network. For weeks, his messages had promised understanding, acceptance, a connection that transcended appearances. He had written poetry, shared philosophical musings, and even sent virtual flowers from the crystal gardens of his homeworld. For a brief, precious moment, hope had fluttered in her chest like the bioluminescent moths of her oceans, fleeting, radiant and fragile. Their eyes met across the room, and for a heartbeat everything seemed possible. But then his expression shifted, the warmth of expectation giving way to cold calculation. Surprise curdled into amusement, amusement into ridicule. The man who had seemed gentle in messages now exuded condescension as he walked directly toward her, each step deliberate and measured, each movement emphasizing his dominance. He ignored the flowers she had placed on the table, the careful arrangement of her hair, the hours she had spent preparing herself in the traditional Carrie style. Standing before her, he forced his presence into the room like a weapon. "Zara," he said, his tone carrying over the murmuring tables, not a greeting, but a performance designed for maximum humiliation. "Yes, she began, her voice soft, trembling with hope. "The photos you sent must be very old," he cut in, his laugh sharp and cutting. "I knew your species was robust, but this is something else." The word robust hung in the air like a cruel curse. Nearby tables fell silent as more patrons turned to watch. Zara could feel their emotions swell. Curiosity, shock, delight at her discomfort, amplified by her empathic sensitivity. Her lavender skin deepened to a richer purple, a Carrie equivalent of a blush impossible to hide. Her secondary arms quivered as she fought to stay upright, every breath a battle against panic. "I used current photos," she said, her voice barely rising above a whisper. "I was honest in my profile. I thought you understood." His smirk widened, his voice rising, drawing even more attention. "You could have mentioned that curvy meant could eat a small moon. I have standards, sweetheart. Standards that don't include needing to rent a cargo bay just to dine." The traders at the bar roared with fresh laughter, and others began filming on their devices. The soft chimes of their devices blended into a cacophony of digital voyeurism. In an instant, Zara's humiliation became public spectacle. Her private anguish transformed into entertainment across the sector. Her forearms shook as she rose to her full height, a proud trait inherited from the high-gravity world of her ancestors. At nearly 7 feet, she could look down on him, but the weight of exposure and judgment pressed down like a star collapsing into itself. What had once been a symbol of strength now felt like another mark of alienation, another way she didn't fit into the galaxy's narrow standards. "Please, you don't have to be cruel," she said, her voice trembling but still carrying the melodic quality of her homeworld songs. "I don't expect a connection," Zara said, her voice barely carrying over the murmurs of the cantina. "I only ask that you treat me with basic decency." Nexon stepped back, exaggerating his movements for the benefit of the growing crowd, each gesture calibrated for maximum attention. "Decency," he scoffed, his grin sharp. "The only connection I feel is to the exit. Let's call this what it is. False advertising on a cosmic scale." His words hit her like micrometeors, each syllable intended to wound. Around them, laughter rose, mingling with the quiet chimes of recording devices, streaming her humiliation across the sector. But while the cantina buzzed with voyeuristic delight, something flickered in the shadows of a secluded corner. Behind a screen of Terran bamboo and shimmering Alarian crystals, a pair of eyes watched. Not amused, not curious, but burning with an ancient, smoldering anger, the kind that could ignite a starless void. Recording devices multiplied, little mechanical parasites capturing every moment. Soft tones signaled live streams broadcasting to countless networks, and the ambient lighting seemed to tighten around the scene, as if the cantina itself were complicit in the performance. Nexon reveled in the attention, turning toward his audience like a plant reaching for a destructive sun, his silk catching the light as he gestured flamboyantly. "Look at this, everyone," he announced, voice smooth and polished like a practiced entertainer. "The dating algorithm must be broken. What's next? Matching me with a gas giant? A tiny asteroid belt?" Chuckles rippled through the spectators, and Zara felt the empathic sting of the crowd's emotions. Amusement, cruel delight, voyeuristic glee, washing over her like a toxic radiation field. A Vidian couple exchanged uneasy clicks, their discomfort audible even across species barriers. The Alarian's harmonic chimes faltered, their translucent forms dimming as if sharing her distress. Yet no one intervened. In a galaxy built on non-interference, personal cruelty was rarely met with action. It was entertainment. Zara remained upright, tears forming at the edges of her violet eyes, catching the cantina's light like miniature constellations. Her secondary arms hugged herself, primary hands gripping the chair's edge, knuckles pale against the deepening purple of her skin. "I'll leave," she murmured, voice trembling but still lyrical. "I don't want to make trouble for anyone." "Trouble?" Nexon laughed, producing his own recording device with the ease of someone accustomed to documenting life as content. "This isn't trouble. This is content gold. Worst blind date in the galaxy. Millions of views guaranteed." He angled the device, capturing both of them, highlighting what he saw as the absurdity of the encounter. His practiced movements betrayed experience, an expert turning another's suffering into entertainment. "So tell me, folks at home," he said, slipping seamlessly into the tone of a professional influencer, intimate yet performative, "what's the most diplomatic way to tell someone they need their own gravitational field?" The traders at the bar erupted, slapping backs and raising glasses in gleeful applause. Other patrons joined in, posting, sharing, and commenting, turning Zara's private humiliation into a viral spectacle. One voice rang across the room. "You're going viral, buddy." Capture her reaction. Zara could see devices emerging from pockets, purses, and hanging straps. The cantina's background chatter melted into a frenzy of digital cruelty, every conversation pulling her further into the center of the audience's attention. Even species known for their empathy seemed swept up, their better instincts overwhelmed by the thrill of watching someone falter. Finally, the tears spilled freely, sliding down her cheeks in silver rivulets against her lavender skin. Each drop shimmered in the ambient light, beautiful yet heartbreaking in context. Her hands trembled as she reached for her purse, her movements deliberate, retaining dignity even as her composure frayed. The purse itself was a small work of art, a quiet rebellion of elegance in the midst of chaos. The purse she clutched was more than a simple accessory. Crafted in the traditional Kari style, it incorporated living coral and bioluminescent organisms arranged in delicate patterns that told her family's story. It had been a gift from her grandmother before Zara left their homeworld to pursue her path as an empathic healer. A quiet reminder of who she was, beneath the surface judgments of the galaxy. "I'm sorry for wasting your time," she whispered, her voice wavering but still carrying the melodic cadence that marked her people's speech. "I hope the rest of your evening improves." Even in her lowest moment, she embodied the courtesy and grace her culture prized above all else. The Kari believed that true character was revealed in moments of trial, and Zara refused to let cruelty shape her into something cruel. "Wasting your time?" Nexon laughed, spinning toward the crowd, arms outstretched as if conducting an orchestra. "You've made my career. This is what happens when everyone pretends that every being is equally attractive. Someone has to provide a reality check." The audience responded with laughter and murmurs of agreement, feeding his performance. To them, a dating mishap had become a spectacle of social commentary. "Someone has to say what everyone's thinking," Nexon continued, voice growing bolder with every chuckle. "You can't always be diplomatic. Sometimes honesty is more important than feelings." Then the air shifted, almost imperceptibly, like the calm before a storm. A chair scraped against the metal floor, sharp and deliberate. From a secluded corner of the cantina, behind clusters of decorative plants and crystalline sculptures, a figure rose. He moved with quiet authority, every step measured. Weathered lines traced his face, a map of experience and survival, of witnessing both the harsh and tender truths of the galaxy. His gray-blue eyes radiated a hard-won wisdom, the kind earned through years of navigating danger, loss, and reconciliation. At his side, a small girl no older than 8 tugged on his sleeve, her curly brown hair framing a troubled expression. "Daddy," she asked, her voice carrying clearly through the sudden hush, "why is that man being mean to the nice lady?" The man placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, firm yet gentle, the touch of someone who had faced grief and emerged steadfast. "Because sometimes people forget that kindness matters more than appearances," he said softly, his voice steady with the conviction of lived experience. He began walking toward Zara's table, his daughter's hand secure in his own. Each step was deliberate, unhurried but resolute, a man guided by instinct and principle rather than spectacle. Slowly, the attention of the cantina began to shift. The room's energy changed, the predatory amusement fading into watchful anticipation. The crowd, caught between curiosity and uncertainty, felt the tension mount as the man approached. He moved with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen life's beauty and cruelty, who had survived meteor storms and asteroid fields, who had held his daughter close while the galaxy's vast dangers passed by. His gray-blue eyes carried the weight of loss and the calm of hard-earned understanding, the kind of presence that demanded respect without a single word. Nexon, still basking in digital applause and the crowd's laughter, noticed him but barely registered his approach. In his mind, the scene remained one of entertainment, another clip for his growing audience. The man's simple attire marked him as a working-class type, likely a freight hauler or station maintenance worker, the kind of person Nexon's followers would expect to stay out of the spotlight rather than interrupt a carefully curated performance. And here comes another bleeding heart, Nexon muttered to his recording device, his tone dripping with the casual dismissal of someone accustomed to always being the center of attention. Probably wants to lecture us about sensitivity or interspecies etiquette. Yet as the man came to stand beside Zara, the cantina seemed to shift. His presence carried a calm that sliced through the chaos like a blade through fabric of space-time. He looked down at Zara, eyes full of compassion, recognizing the echoes of suffering that resonated with his own hard-earned experiences. Then he turned toward Nexon, and the air seemed to freeze. His weathered face hardened, radiating moral certainty and a cold, steady anger that burned quietly rather than erupting violently. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had led crews through pirate-ridden sectors, navigated freight ships across asteroid fields, and made life-or-death decisions countless times. "I think you dropped something." Nexon blinked, caught off guard, unsure how to incorporate this unplanned variable into his content. His recording device continued rolling, capturing everything, but the story he had rehearsed was suddenly threatened. "What? I didn't drop anything," he said, his confident performance faltering. "Your humanity," the man replied simply, his words falling into the cantina like stones in still water, sending ripples through the audience. "Though looking at you now, I wonder if you ever had any to begin with." The cantina fell utterly silent, as if some unseen force had muted every conversation, every hum of machinery, every note of background music. Even the crystalline Alarians ceased their harmonic chiming. The Vidian couple stopped chittering. Energy beings held their plasma forms motionless. Nexon's face flushed red with embarrassment and rage. His carefully cultivated image as a witty commentator on galactic dating culture was crumbling before him. "Listen, old man, this isn't your business," he sputtered, grasping at control. "I'm just pointing out basic compatibility. Nothing wrong with having standards." The man stepped closer. Though of average human height, his presence forced Nexon to take an instinctive step back. His voice was calm, steady, yet carried undeniable weight, the authority of someone who had faced real danger and emerged with unbroken principles. "About your failure to see beauty when it's right in front of you. About your need to harm others just to feel superior." The little girl at his side looked up at her father, her wide eyes reflecting the tension. "Daddy, he's really angry," she whispered. But in the cantina's profound silence, the words carried clearly. "Yes," he replied, never taking his gaze off Nexon. His tone remained composed, but beneath it lay the protective fire of someone who had dedicated his life to keeping the vulnerable safe. Good people get angry when they see bullies hurting the innocent. Zara stood frozen, her violet eyes wide with disbelief. In all her years traveling the galaxy as an empathic healer, enduring whispers, casual cruelties, and the cold indifference of strangers, no one had ever defended her. No one had ever treated her dignity as something worth protecting. Her empathic senses flared, absorbing the stranger's genuine, righteous anger, not performative outrage, but the deep, steady fury of someone who refused to let vulnerability be exploited. "Who do you think you are?" Nexon demanded, his voice rising as panic edged into his performance. "Look around," the man said, scanning the cantina slowly. His gaze met the eyes of those who had laughed at Zara's humiliation. "Everyone here sees what I see. I'm only saying what they're all thinking but are too polite to say out loud." One by one, the patrons averted their eyes, shame slowly coloring their faces. The Vidian couple's chittering fell into hesitant, apologetic tones. The Alarians' forms dimmed, as if acknowledging the weight of what had just been said. The tide in the cantina had shifted. The Predator's stage had been dismantled, and in its place the quiet authority of conscience now held sway. The cantina seemed to shrink under the weight of the man's words. Even the traders at the bar suddenly found their drinks fascinating. avoiding eye contact as if the moral reckoning unfolding before them might spill over. "You know what I see when I look around?" the man asked, turning back to Nexon with the patience of someone teaching a child the basics of ethics. "I see a room full of beings who've forgotten that true worth isn't measured by appearance, but by how one treats others. And by that measure, sir, you are the ugliest presence in this entire cantina." His words hit like a shockwave. The crowd's laughter faltered, replaced with a dawning awareness of their own complicity. The Vidian couple's chittering softened into regretful murmurs. The Ilarians' chimes shifted, resonating in harmonious approval. Even the energy beings pulsed brighter, their plasma forms flickering in what could only be called silent applause, for someone finally speaking truth in a place poisoned by cruelty. Nexon's recording device trembled in his hand. His viewer count spiked and shifted in ways he hadn't anticipated. The comment section overflowed with criticism of his behavior rather than praise. Hashtags quickly formed, painting him as the villain instead of the witty social commentator he imagined himself to be. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered, trying to salvage his control. "You can't seriously tell me that beauty standards are wrong. Physical attraction is natural, biological." Then in a moment no one expected, the man's harsh gaze softened. He turned toward Zara, offering his arm with the quiet dignity of an old-fashioned gentleman. "Ma'am," he said, genuine warmth in his voice, "would you do me the honor of joining my daughter and me for dinner? We were just about to order, and frankly, we could use the company of someone with a truly beautiful soul." For Zara, it was like encountering an artifact from a lost civilization. Her hands trembled as emotions long buried surged through her empathic senses like solar flares across a star's surface. She felt warmth radiating from him. Not pity, not performative charity, but authentic recognition of her worth as a person. "I don't understand," she whispered, silver tears catching the light like fragments of starlight. Her voice wove confusion and hope into the kind of harmonic complexity that made Carrie's speech so mesmerizing when raw emotions shone through. "Understanding is simple," the man replied, his voice calm and patient, shaped by years of explaining life's truths to his daughter. "You are someone deserving of dignity and respect." He nodded toward Nexon without breaking his gaze with Zara. "Is just a small, frightened creature trying to feel big by making others feel small. The choice of company is obvious to anyone with a functioning moral compass." His daughter stepped forward, her young face bright with innocent curiosity, untainted by the prejudices that adults accumulated over a lifetime of travels and experiences. "You're really pretty," she said sincerely, her small voice cutting through the cantina's charged air like sunlight piercing storm clouds, like the princess and daddy's stories about the crystal cities. "Are your eyes really purple, or do they change like the mood indicators on the ship?" Zara's smile broke through her tears, softening her expression as she knelt to meet the child's gaze. Her movement was graceful, adapted to navigating spaces designed for smaller beings. "They change with my emotions," she explained, her voice soft with wonder. "Right now they're violet because I'm sad. When I'm happy, they turn silver like starlight, and when I'm excited, they become deep indigo like the oceans of my homeworld." "That's amazing," the girl exclaimed, clapping her hands in delight. "Daddy, her eyes are like the mood indicators on the ship, but even cooler." "Because they're real and beautiful." The man chuckled, a deep, warm sound that carried the quiet strength of someone who had seen both the darkness and light of the galaxy, and had chosen to protect the light wherever he could. David's voice carried the warmth of parental pride and genuine amusement at his daughter's unfiltered honesty. He extended a firm, welcoming hand to Zara, the roughness of his palm telling stories of years at ship controls, managing cargo, and performing the countless small repairs that kept freight vessels running across the vast void between stars. "I'm David Chen, and this remarkable young lady is my daughter, Emma," he said, pride evident in every syllable. "We're haulers, traveling the shipping lanes together for the past 3 years since her mother passed. Emma's been my co-pilot, navigator, and chief morale officer for our little 2-person crew." Emma's smile radiated pride and familiarity, clearly used to being treated as a partner in their adventures rather than a tag-along. "I'm Zara," she replied, taking his hand with one of her main limbs while using a secondary arm to wipe away the last of her tears. The movement was fluid and natural, a graceful demonstration of the advantages her forearms offered in a world designed for fewer. "I'm an empathic healer, currently between assignments after completing a rotation at a medical station in the Centauri system." David's eyes brightened with respect, his whole face transforming. A healer, one of the noblest callings in the galaxy. No wonder you radiate such calm and compassion. Emma and I have met healers on several worlds. They're always the kind of people who choose to reduce suffering instead of causing it. His words carried the authority of experience, suggesting encounters with healers who had left lasting impressions on him. For Zara, whose abilities were often dismissed as manipulation, or dismissed outright by those who couldn't understand empathic powers, David's immediate recognition felt like a soothing balm for years of skepticism and misunderstanding. Meanwhile, Nexon struggled, sensing his carefully crafted viral moment slipping through his fingers like air escaping a breached hull. "This is all very touching," he blurted, forcing a jovial tone, but let's be realistic. You're just virtue signaling, old man. No one actually finds that attractive. You're just showing off for the cameras, playing the white knight for social media points. His words carried the desperation of someone unable to accept that his worldview was being upended by genuine human decency. To him, kindness had to be performance. True compassion simply didn't fit his model of human behavior. David rose fully, briefly resting a supportive hand on Zara's shoulder, sending a wave of warmth through her empathic senses. Then he faced Nexon, his expression hardening into the calm, resolute authority earned by years of difficult choices in dangerous corners of the galaxy. "You want to know what I find attractive?" he asked, his gray-blue eyes locking onto Nexon's with the piercing clarity of someone who had seen through deception and survived. "Intelligence, kindness, the strength to endure cruelty with grace. The courage to keep hoping for connection, even after repeated disappointment." His voice grew stronger with each trait, carrying the weight of experience and conviction, shaped by years navigating perilous routes, hostile pirates, and corrupt officials. He turned his gaze to Zara, and the intensity of his recognition made her pulse quicken. "And looking at you, I see all of that and more. I see someone who chose a profession dedicated to healing others' pain. Someone who dressed with care tonight, hoping for connection, maintaining her dignity even while being publicly humiliated. Someone whose very presence makes this cantina a better place simply by existing." The room had fallen so silent that even the soft hum of the life support systems felt amplified, a backdrop to words that were transforming the atmosphere itself. David's voice reached every corner, touching patrons who had come for entertainment but now found themselves witnessing something like a moral lesson. Zara's eyes shifted, violet fading into silver starlight, hope rekindling for the first time in years. Her empathic abilities confirmed what her heart already sensed. This wasn't performance, not charity. It was authentic recognition of her worth as a person. "That's really what you see when you look at me," she whispered, her voice trembling yet carrying clearly in the absolute silence. David nodded with unwavering certainty, the kind born of years of learning to separate truth from falsehood in the perilous spaces between stars. "And more," he affirmed. "I see someone whose empathic abilities mean she likely feels the pain of others as if it were her own, and yet still chooses to care, to heal, to be compassionate. I see someone who has dedicated her life to healing," David said, his voice firm yet tender. "Someone who's been hurt repeatedly but hasn't let that pain turn her cruel or bitter. Someone who deserves to be cherished, not mocked." Then he did something that made the entire cantina hold its collective breath. He turned to face the crowd, letting his words resonate through every corner of the establishment. Not just Nexon, but everyone who had silently allowed cruelty to go unchecked. "How many of you have ever felt alone?" he asked, his tone cutting through pretense and forcing self-reflection. "Ever been judged for how you look? Ever felt unworthy of love because you don't fit someone else's narrow definition of perfect?" Hands began to rise. Vidians, Alarians, humans, even some of the pulsing energy beings acknowledged experiences they had once thought unique to their own kind. Then you know the courage it takes to keep trying, to keep believing in the possibility of connection despite repeated disappointment. David continued, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had suffered and survived, but had retained his capacity for love. That courage, that hope in the face of cruelty, that determination to remain open to beauty despite being hurt. He paused, letting the words settle. That is one of the most magnificent things in the universe. It wasn't just respect in his voice. It was reverence, the kind of awe usually reserved for cosmic phenomena, nebula births, the elegant dance of binary stars. And in that moment, the cantina went silent. Every being present realized they were witnessing something extraordinary. A moment that would linger long after the recordings ended, after social media feeds moved on. They were seeing love recognize itself, and in doing so transform everything around it. David turned back to Zara, his rugged features softened by a profound emotion that went beyond kindness, beyond compassion, something deeper, almost sacred. Emma bounced on her toes beside him, her young face alive with excitement at the unfolding moment, yet carrying a quiet, intuitive wisdom only children seem to possess, the kind adults often forget. "You know what else I see when I look at you?" David said, his tone dropping to something intimate, yet somehow still filling the silent room like a prayer echoing through a cathedral. "I see someone who understands loss in ways most beings never will. Someone who has felt the loneliness of a cold, indifferent universe, yet has not let that make her cold in return." Zara's silver eyes widened, as her empathic senses absorbed the depth of his emotional aura. She felt the ancient, layered grief he carried, a sorrow that had shaped him in profound ways. But she also felt something else. Strength forged through loss, wisdom earned through enduring pain, and a capacity for love that had grown, rather than diminished, through suffering. "My wife used to say that the most beautiful souls are those who have been broken and choose to heal rather than become bitter," David said, voice thick with memory but steady with acceptance. "She died 3 years ago in a transport accident. One of those random catastrophes that space travel sometimes demands as payment for the privilege of moving between worlds. For a long time, Emma and I drifted through the shipping lanes, lost in our grief like debris from a wrecked ship." Emma nodded solemnly and slipped her small hand into one of Zara's secondary arms. Her touch was warm, trusting, a child's simple gesture of kindness that spoke volumes. "Mommy used to say," she added, her voice clear and unguarded, "mean people are just scared people who forgot how to be brave. We should be extra kind to scared people because they need it most. But we should be extra special kind to people who are brave enough to keep being good even when others are mean." Her words hit the cantina like a shockwave. Patrons were forced to confront not only their treatment of Zara, but also the insecurities and fears that had allowed them to accept cruelty as normal. Nexon's face drained of color. His recording device trembled in his hand, forgotten, as the comment section of his live stream flooded with criticism of his behavior and praise for David's intervention. His attempt at viral fame had succeeded, but in the exact opposite way he intended. His name trended across networks now synonymous with cowardice and cruelty rather than wit or charm. "This is blown way out of proportion," he stammered, his confident persona cracking like compromised hull plating. "I was just being honest about physical attraction. There's nothing wrong with having standards, with knowing what you're attracted to. Preferences." David's voice cut through him, calm, precise, and piercing, like a laser designed to strike without unnecessary damage. "You weren't expressing a preference," he said. "You were performing cruelty for an audience. There is a universe of difference between politely declining a connection and deliberately humiliating someone for your own amusement. You weren't just expressing a preference," David continued, his voice steady and unwavering. "You were publicly humiliating someone for your own amusement and to gain social media clout." The cantina seemed to shift on a fundamental level, as if the moral weight of the moment had altered the very air. What had begun as a spectacle of cruelty transformed into something like a reckoning, compelling everyone present to confront their own complicity in the entertainment derived from another's suffering. Patrons who had once laughed now recorded Nexon's behavior with judgment rather than delight. Several approached Zara's table, offering apologies and gestures of support. A Vidian couple arrived first. Their voices, soft and hesitant, conveyed genuine regret. "We are deeply ashamed for not speaking sooner," the female said, her wide eyes reflecting sincere remorse. "On our homeworld, we have an old saying, beauty is found in the harmony of souls, not in symmetry of forms. Tonight we forgot our own wisdom." Next came the crystalline Alarians, their forms emitting harmonious chimes and pulsing lights. The combination of sound and color conveyed apology and recognition of Zara's worth in a language beyond words, resonating directly with everyone present. Even some human traders who had earlier contributed to the ridicule approached. One of the older men, his face lined with embarrassment, spoke softly. "Look, ma'am," he said, "we've been in space too long, seen too much ugliness. We forgot that being decent costs nothing and makes everything better. You seem like good people, and we're sorry for what we did." Zara's eyes, now fully silver, brimmed with tears, not of pain, but of gratitude. Her empathic senses confirmed what her heart was telling her. These gestures were genuine, a testament to the capacity for growth that exists within most beings when they are confronted with their own actions. "I don't know what to say," she whispered to David, her voice trembling with emotions she had never anticipated feeling. David's gray-blue eyes locked onto hers, unwavering, giving her the space and focus to speak. "In all my years traveling the galaxy, working on medical stations, helping beings from dozens of species, no one has ever made me feel like I was worth defending," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "Like my dignity mattered to someone besides myself." David's expression hardened, a mix of protective fury and the gentlest stirrings of something deeper. "Then you've been surrounded by fools," he said firmly, "who couldn't recognize a treasure when it was standing right in front of them. You're not just worth defending, you're worth celebrating, worth cherishing, worth building a life around." Nexon, watching his control collapse and his social metrics turn against him in real time, made one last desperate attempt to reclaim the narrative. Fine, he sneered, bitterness coating his tone. "You want to play the white knight for the alien, go ahead. But don't pretend this is about anything more than virtue signaling. Don't pretend you actually find her attractive. Don't pretend you actually care." David stepped forward, his eyes blazing with a calm yet terrifying intensity. Patrons instinctively took a step back as his voice lowered to a controlled whisper that carried across the cantina, like the calm at the center of a storm. "Do you want to know what this is actually about?" he asked, voice sharp, unwavering, full of absolute truth. "This is about recognizing that in a universe filled with darkness and cruelty, anyone who chooses to bring light, to heal, deserves to be cherished like the rare and precious gift they are. This is about understanding that true beauty comes from character, from choices, from how someone treats others when no one is watching." He paused, his gaze shifting to Zara, and her empathic senses were flooded with a warmth and clarity she had never felt before. "And this is about the fact that I've spent 20 minutes watching this woman handle unimaginable cruelty with grace and dignity, and I'm already more drawn to her, intellectually, emotionally, and yes, physically, than anyone I've been attracted to since my wife died 3 years ago." But the true power of the moment wasn't in his words alone. It was in the recognition of something the galaxy had long forgotten, the transformative force of genuine acknowledgement. The way real admiration and even love could emerge, in the most unexpected moments when two souls recognized something essential and eternal in each other, transcending surface differences, prejudices, and social expectations. The cantina seemed to hold its collective breath, as if the truth David had spoken had altered the very air itself. His words lingered like music from a cosmic symphony, resonant, undeniable, and capable of changing everything they touched. Zara's 4 hands flew to her mouth in shock, her silver eyes wide as they reflected the cantina's ambient lights like captured starlight. The empathic resonance from David's aura confirmed what her hearts were scarcely daring to hope. His words were not performance or charity, but genuine recognition of a connection that transcended every social barrier in the galaxy. "You... what?" she whispered, her voice weaving wonder, fear, and hope into a single delicate chord. David's weathered face softened, a gentle smile touching the corners of his mouth. His gray-blue eyes, deep and knowing, carried the weight of someone who had learned to recognize authentic emotion, after years navigating both physical and emotional dangers among the stars. "I know it seems impossible," he admitted, wonder threading through his voice. "We've only known each other for 20 minutes, yet sometimes the heart sees what the mind takes years to understand. Sometimes two souls meet and immediately know they've found something rare and precious." He turned, extending his gesture to include Emma, his hand resting lightly on his daughter's shoulder. "For 3 years Emma and I have been alone," he continued, his voice thick with memory but strengthened by newfound purpose. "We've learned to survive, to find joy in our little family, and our travels through the shipping lanes. But tonight, seeing your grace under pressure, feeling the warmth you radiate like a gentle star, I realized we don't want to be alone anymore." Emma tugged on her father's sleeve, her small voice clear and confident amidst the hush of the cantina. "Daddy, does this mean Zara can have dinner with us?" David's gaze never left Zara as he answered. "I want to hear about the crystal cities and the deep oceans and show you my drawings of all the worlds we've visited, if you'll join us." Nexon's jaw dropped. His recording device captured his own humiliation in real time, while the comment section of his live stream exploded with support for the small, unexpected family forming before him. His viral cruelty had indeed gone viral, but as a cautionary tale. "This is insane," he muttered, flustered and unsure. "You can't. She's an alien. She's overweight. She's wrong for someone like you." "She's perfect," David interrupted, calm and absolute. "And you're exactly the type of person I teach my daughter to recognize and avoid. Narrow-minded where the universe calls for expansion. Cruel where kindness costs nothing. Hollow where it matters most." David extended his hand toward Zara again. On the other side, Emma held out hers, completing a circle of trust and connection that felt as natural as breathing, despite having formed in only minutes. Together, the three of them embodied a bond that transcended species and social expectations. "Shall we?" David asked warmly, invitation in his tone. "I know a little place on Deck 7 that serves Terran dishes alongside Carrie comfort food. Emma's eager to try new things, and I suspect you have dishes that could expand our culinary horizons." "Yes, and I want to learn Carrie words," Emma exclaimed, her small hand already clasped in one of Zara's secondary arms. "And I want to show you all the star charts Daddy's taught me and the games we play during long jumps through hyperspace." Zara looked between them, her empathic senses confirming what her hearts already knew. This was real. Their acceptance was complete, offered without hesitation or reservation. For the first time in years of traveling a galaxy that had constantly made her feel alien, she felt truly seen, truly valued, truly wanted. "I would love nothing more," she whispered. Then, finding her strength, she spoke louder, her voice ringing through the cantina like a triumphant bell. "But first, I think Mr. Vex owes this entire cantina an apology for his behavior, for the pain he caused, not just to me, but to everyone who had to witness such deliberate cruelty." A ripple of agreement spread through the crowd. Every recording device now focused on Nexon, who found himself surrounded by disapproving faces from a dozen different species. The cantina's energy had shifted entirely. Justice, recognition, and the promise of connection filling every corner of the space. The cantina's mood had completely shifted. What had started as an audience for Nexon's performance had transformed into a jury, silently weighing his behavior and finding it wanting. My dating profile was misleading," he stammered, his earlier bravado dissipating like gas in a vacuum. Social media fame had arrived, yes, but it was painting him as a warning rather than a hero. "The only thing misleading here," the Vidian female chittered sharply, her words carrying the moral weight of a species famed for its ethics, "was your performance as a decent being. On Altar 7, we would compose songs of shame about behavior like this," added one of the crystalline Alarians, their harmonic chimes vibrating with clear disapproval. Nexon's eyes darted around the cantina, realizing too late that his attempt at viral fame had indeed gone viral. But as a cautionary tale, comments on his streams were overwhelmingly negative. Sponsors were already withdrawing support. His plan had spectacularly backfired. "Fine," he snapped, voice bitter as the weight of consequences finally sank in. "I'm sorry for being honest about physical standards. I'm sorry for saying what everyone was thinking but too politically correct to say aloud." "That's not an apology," David said, his voice steady and firm, carrying the patient authority of someone who had taught a child the difference between real remorse and excuses. "That's just cruelty dressed up as martyrdom. A true apology owns the harm caused and accepts responsibility without blaming the victim." Then David did something transformative. He turned away from Nexon entirely, dismissing him as irrelevant, and opened both arms to his newfound family. "Come on," he said to Zara and Emma, warmth and anticipation in his voice. "Let's go somewhere we can enjoy each other's company and start discovering the incredible people we're going to become together." As they moved toward the cantina's exit, Zara's dress trailing like lavender starlight, Emma chattering eagerly about crystal cities, shifting eye colors, and interstellar adventures, the other patrons began to applaud. Soft at first, then louder, until the entire cantina thundered with approval for the love story unfolding before them. The applause wasn't just for Zara, David, and Emma. It was for a reminder that kindness existed in a universe that often seemed cruel. That love could appear in the most unlikely circumstances. That standing up for others wasn't just morally right. It could create something genuinely beautiful. Nexon, meanwhile, remained alone in the center of the room, his recording device still capturing every humiliating moment. No one looked at him with amusement anymore. No one cared for his excuses. He had become exactly what he tried to make Zara, an object of shame and ridicule, as the small, mismatched family disappeared through the cantina doors, their laughter echoing down the corridor. No one present would dare judge by appearances again. They had witnessed not just the defeat of cruelty, but the birth of something extraordinary. 6 months later, David, Chen, and Zara's wedding was broadcast across 17 star systems, not for fame, but because their story had become a symbol of hope that transcended species, culture, and expectation. The ceremony was held on the observation deck of Medical Station Harmony, where Zara had accepted a position as chief empathic healer. Her reputation for skill and compassion had spread across the galaxy. Through the massive transparent windows, the Andromeda Galaxy sprawled beyond, its stars seeming to shimmer in celebration of the union below. Emma served as flower girl, her dress a miniature echo of Zara's, combining Terran silk with bioluminescent carry fibers that pulsed gently with excitement. Her flower petals were crystalline fragments from Altar 7, chiming like tiny bells as they fell, creating a musical pathway for the bride's approach. The audience included beings from across the galaxy who had been touched by their story. The Vidian couple, who had offered their first apology that night, now joined in chittering blessings. The crystalline Ilarians harmonized a wedding song that brought tears to every eye, while energy beings floated above, their plasma forms painting auroras across the observation deck ceiling. Even the freight hauler community, long inspired by David's and Zara's values of loyalty, courage, and judging worth by character rather than appearance, had altered shipping routes to witness the event. Ships from dozens of companies paused in the system, their crews witnessing the culmination of a story that had grown far larger than any one species could have imagined. Weeks passed, and the story of that night continued to resonate across star systems. Captains of freighters, explorers, and wanderers paused in their journeys to honor the man who had reminded them why they chose the dangerous freedom of space over the narrow safety of planetary prejudice. Nexon's name had become infamous, but not in the way he'd hoped. Instead of fame and fortune, he became a cautionary tale, cited in Galactic Alliance sensitivity programs. His attempts to capitalize on notoriety failed utterly. He was unemployable, socially shunned, and last seen working sanitation on a remote outer rim mining station, far from the worlds that remembered his cruelty. But the real legacy of that night lived on in countless acts of courage and connection. Interspecies couples, inspired by David and Zara, began overcoming their own fears and societal barriers. Anti-bullying campaigns referenced their story as a model for standing up to cruelty. Educational programs taught young beings to distinguish natural preference from harmful prejudice. Slowly, the galaxy's understanding of attraction, connection, and beauty began to shift. Dating services reported a rise in interspecies matches, and support networks for those feeling isolated by appearance or origin grew rapidly. People discovered they were not alone, and that love could flourish despite differences. During the wedding ceremony, David and Zara exchanged vows written in 3 languages: Standard, Carry harmonic script, and the precise structure of Terran poetry. Emma, standing proudly by her mother, stepped forward to make her own promise. "I promise to be the best big sister in the galaxy," she said, her small hand resting on Zara's belly where their first child grew, a genetic miracle being studied as a landmark example of successful human Kari reproduction. "And I promise to teach our baby that families aren't made by how we look, but by how much we love each other. Love is the most powerful force in the universe." The child within Zara already showed remarkable traits: hybrid vigor blending Kari, empathic ability with human adaptability, and resilience, suggesting this next generation might bridge even more gaps between species. As the newlyweds kissed beneath the stars, their love story spread through subspace communications and quantum networks, sending a message that would outlast them both. The wedding reception became more than a celebration of 2 lives. It was a festival of possibility. Strangers found common ground. Once distant species discovered reasons to collaborate, and children from multiple worlds played together, seeing difference as intriguing rather than threatening. In the months that followed, pulling a Chen, standing up for someone being bullied, became galactic slang, a term of courage and hope. The cantina where it all began became a pilgrimage site, with beings traveling light years to sit at table 7, remembering that love can bloom in the most unexpected places. A small plaque commemorated the night, a reminder that every being deserves dignity and that the most meaningful connections often come from the unlikeliest meetings. As their first anniversary approached, David and Zara's story continued to inspire. Emma, now a junior ambassador, spoke at schools and stations about life in a truly diverse family. Their infant son, Marcus, showed signs of inheriting both his mother's empathic gifts and his father's wisdom. Yet the most profound legacy was simple. In a galaxy accustomed to division, two beings had found one another across every obstacle, proving that love can transform not just individual lives but society itself. The stars seemed to shine brighter whenever their story was told, as if the cosmos itself approved of the love that had grown from a single act of courage in a cantina full of strangers. Across the void, other hearts learned the same truth. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, and the wisest eyes see the luminous soul beneath surface differences. In a universe built on diversity, the most revolutionary act is recognizing that all hearts beat with the same longing, to be seen, valued, and loved for who they truly are. And when two souls meet with that understanding, they don't just find joy for themselves, they light a beacon guiding others home across the infinite darkness. Their love became legend, proof that a universe vast enough to hold every form of life also holds room for every kind of love, and that the most extraordinary forms are often those that seem impossible till the moment they become inevitable.